Hello and welcome back to Walk the Cinema podcast. Today is episode 4 of the Oscar highlights, and we are going to be talking about Drive My Car.
So this is the only foreign language movie nominated, which in itself is an achievement.
Mm-hmm.
I did not expect it to be nominated, especially because it didn't get the hype that Parasite or Roma did as it came out.
Yeah,
because
definitely
when
not.
Parasite came out, that was huge.
Yeah.
This is not really that huge. It's still in theaters, but people aren't getting off their seats to go watch this.
Yeah, because I remember this wasn't really even on my radar to even watch this year or, in 2021. Mostly because I just hadn't heard anything about it. I think the only reason I did hear anything about it is because you brought it up maybe a couple times in conversation.
I guess, yeah.
Whereas like with Parasite and Roma, that seemed more, jammed down your throats. Not that they were bad movies, right? But
No.
they seemed more in your face.
There's just, they got really popular, especially with like the internet crowd, but like the real life crowd too, and the Oscar crowd. So everyone got in the known of those. And this one, I guess I didn't assume that the Oscar voters were super familiar with. But it makes sense.
This is probably the most interesting nomination out of all of the ones that were chosen.
Do you think this is the more out of the pattern of what they usually nominate?
I wouldn't say that it's necessarily out of pattern, but maybe a little bit, because I think this has a lot of layers to it, and it doesn't seem necessarily like it does at first. But the more I thought about it, the more I'm like, there has to be some deeper symbolic meaning, because this doesn't make sense unless you look at it deeper.
This has a lot of meaning, but the outer layer is someone being driven, and the Oscars love that, so I don't think it's out of character. Because the Green Book won, Driving Miss Daisy won.
Right.
This can win. They drive a car, they have someone in the back seat and someone in the front seat.
That's true. But I feel like this movie has so many layers that when I watched it, I kind of took it at face value, and then when, I started thinking about it more, I'm like, there seems to be more to it than just...
Yeah, it's something that's gonna, I think, grow on me on a rewatch. I think I might rate it higher on a rewatch.
I agree.
But I did really enjoy it, especially by the end. Because in the middle of it, you're kind of just going for the ride, and by the end, it is when like you have all the information that your brain analyzes.
Yeah.
So let's, break the movie down, I guess, a little bit.
It starts off with a actor.
He's an actor, director, like a stage actor.
And he was doing a play called Uncle Vanya. And it's a multilingual production.
It's very unique. That's like kind of what I guess they imply is known for, because an actor that he never met comes up to him and praises him on that.
Yeah.
But the beginning, it's him and his wife, and you see how they
interact as a couple.
And how they function, and then we see what the wife does behind his back, kinda. I guess we later found out that it's not really behind his back.
Well, we see that, they're in somewhat of a loving relationship. The opening shot is them in bed after they've, I think, implied that they've had sex.
It immediately starts with her narrating a story.
Yeah.
That's the first line.
And she's narrating a story.
Yeah. And it's a really good start. It's captivating.
Yeah, because it's talking about this girl that sneaks into her crush's room and just stays there, and she has her own sets of rules of why she can and can't do certain things, but she'll leave like a memento.
So even the story inside of this movie, that's not the story of the movie, but it's the story that's inside of this story.
Yeah.
Good.
And you just kind of
Sorry.
You just kind of take it at face, like, again, I'm going to say face value a lot, because this is just, you're being thrust into it. She's just telling you a story, and you're like, okay, cool. But as the movie progresses, the story builds, and then, towards the end, you get something different, which I will talk about because that's one of my favorite scenes.
Well, I guess if you don't know what this is based on, there's no real way of knowing what you're in for.
Mm.
But this is based on a short story that's like 40 pages, and this is 3 hours. So I assume there's elements from other stories, and it's so emotionally complex that you kind of can tell it's an adapted screenplay.
Yeah.
I mean, it could not be. Someone could be just a genius.
Well, my thing is like, okay, so you're at the beginning. It's them living a nice life. You think at first, and then you find out that she's cheating on him, and he doesn't bring it up. He sees it, but he
teases it.
He doesn't bring it up,
or at least the director teases that he's thinking about bringing it up.
Yeah,
or confronting her.
But then when there's the element of her being like, we need to talk when you get home, and then that talk never happens because she died of a cerebral hemorrhage.
Yeah.
And then we kind of get into the second act where it's been 2 years since his wife died. He's quit acting. He still is in the...
He's coming back to it.
Yeah, he's still in the business of it, but he hasn't played the Uncle Vanya, the titular character of the play.
I'm just going to pause and return back to the first act because you didn't mention that they had a daughter.
Oh, yes.
And she died, and that's kind of important.
That is important.
So, yeah, they had a daughter, it died, so that's hard on a marriage. Mm-hmm. But yeah, then the wife dies, and we flash forward 2 years after the credits. Mm-hmm. That happened 40 minutes in, 45 minutes in.
Yeah. I think it was about 40, yeah.
Yeah.
But so then it's the story of him getting back into this production where it's going to be 6 weeks of pre-production and then 2 weeks of shows. And you go through the process of him finding the cast, and one of the cast mates or cast people that he picks is his wife's old lover.
Yeah, the one that we saw.
But
apparently she has many.
Yes, that's another thing. But
yeah.
He's supposed to have a driver for liability purposes.
Right, they don't want him to drive.
They don't want any of their actors to drive.
Yes.
Because one of them killed somebody years ago. So there's that.
Right.
And, as the story progresses, you find out that the lover really did love Otto, the wife. Mm-hmm. And, our main character kind of bonds with the driver.
Yeah. I guess he talks to her, but when he sits next to her for the first time is after the lover exits the car, which I think is what hits him harder is the story that the lover tells. Because the main character thinks that he has this bond with his wife.
Even though she cheated on him with multiple men.
Yeah, but he thinks that the bond that he has with her is so unique to them and so strong that he's willing to accept that she cheats on him physically because he thinks emotionally he's there for her and she doesn't need anyone else. But then he finds out she did the same thing with the others. Mm-hmm. She also told them the stories. She also confided in them.
Yeah.
And I think that really hurts him. That's my opinion. I don't know if you fully agreed.
I don't know. I think that, well, that's kind of like at the end of the act 2, I think is when that kind of gets brought up. But like during that whole second act, it really does focus on acting as like a art form, which was really nice and really unexpected in my opinion. And
it also develops the side characters.
Yeah.
We don't just have shallow side This is why the movie is 3 hours.
Yeah.
Because he really develops everything that's in it. It's imposing in that way. He develops the side characters in a way that he doesn't really have to tell the main story. But it adds a nice element of the reasons he wanted to make the movie. Because I know he mentioned he wanted to make this particular story because A, there was a car and it took place a lot of it took place in the car. And B, it focused on acting and actors and their methods and how we see how they're all different. We have someone that speaks in Korean Sign Language.
Yeah.
They all speak different languages.
Yeah,
well,
Mandarin,
not all of them, but yeah, Korean, Mandarin, Korean, Japanese. And they're doing a Russian play, a Chekhov play. And I guess it doesn't really mean much, but it doesn't have to. You don't have to, like, know what Uncle Vanya is or Chekhov. You don't have to know that, acting is a spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
There's no one way of acting, which they kind of touched down on multiple times. But you don't really need to know that to still understand how hard it is to bring this production together.
Yeah, especially because I think as a director, he really tries to get maximum performance out of them, even when it doesn't necessarily make sense to them.
Yeah, they don't agree, they fight back.
But then, they accept it, and it turns out that they do connect emotionally with their characters and with each other, in the
even
play.
When they don't understand each other.
Yes, that's a big thing where...
They don't understand each other, but they don't need to understand the words to understand the emotion.
Mm-hmm.
I think is a huge focus how, like, acting is transformative.
Yeah.
In that way. That the emotion is more important than the words.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then going back to what you were talking about when, I think his name is Koshi, the wife's lover, when he talks to, Kafuku. Sorry if I butchered that. The main character. When he talks to him about how the story that he knows didn't end where he thought it did, where the girl gets caught, but we don't know by who. But then he explains that there's more to the story.
Yeah.
The person that showed up was a burglar.
Yeah.
And he tries to take advantage of her because she's naked in her crush's room, and she ends up killing him. And she knows that she's going to be found out because obviously she left a dead body in his room. So
but the guy doesn't mention it.
Yeah, she goes to school the next day and everything's fine. He's not traumatized. He's not angry or upset. He just goes about his day as if nothing happened.
But he knows she did it.
Yeah, and she knows he knows she did it. Or somebody did it.
And she knows that his parents also know. I mean, it was true. It happened because they put a camera in front of their house. So they know, they're being protective of their house now, so something had to happen, right? Yeah. So, like, she's not imagining it.
Yeah, and she's going crazy thinking, how would they not say anything? Why would they not say anything? Who are they protecting? Why are they doing it, And she finally looks at the camera and says, "It's me. I did it. It's me. It's me. It's me." And then he's like, I don't know if that's the end of the story or if there was more to it. And they'll never know because she died. But, in that moment, in that particular scene, you start to think that the story that she was telling wasn't just a random story that she thought of in her head. Or maybe it was, but it was like her psyche telling her...
Yeah.
Expressing itself.
It was her own emotions that were coming out in this story.
Yeah.
She knew that the husband knew, but the husband never brought it up about the cheating.
Yeah.
So maybe the time she said she wanted to talk was her saying, it's me.
Yeah.
But she ended up dying. So we never got that resolution?
Yeah, and it's like I think it implies that she knew that he knew she was cheating.
Right.
And she was in some ways angry at him for not confronting her.
Right.
Because I don't know, this is so complex because in my mind, my vision of love, like, you wouldn't do that to somebody that you loved. You wouldn't constantly cheat on them.
But he believes it, though. He believes that she loves him a lot, and it's true love, and the cheating is separate.
Yeah, that she separates it within her mind, or that she has this type of...
Just because she's cheating and looking for other men doesn't mean she doesn't love him.
Yeah, and I think that he kind of likened it to her creativity. Like, she needs that which physical intimacy.
In a way, it's kind of her using him and the others. Because she needs the sex to come up with the stories.
Yeah. But then, like, we haven't even talked about the relationship with his driver yet at all. Because it's so, like, many layers. But he starts... throughout the movie, he, doesn't really want her as a driver. Because he's, he thinks he can drive by himself, or like that's part of his I think one of his last bits of control that he has in his life. Potentially. Like, he couldn't control that his daughter died. He really couldn't control that his wife died. Like, the only thing he has is that he can still drive even though he has glaucoma, you know?
Yeah.
But even that's gonna take it away. Like, that's eventually going to not be... He's not going to be allowed to drive at some point.
Right. You also didn't mention that he drives this car that he loves for some reason.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's an old car, but it's a perfect car. Which probably means something that I'm not good enough to know. Because this is an old car. It mentions that it's a very old car, but electrically it's completely fine. No problems with it.
Yeah.
We never see the car break down. Nothing bad ever happens to the car. So it's some type of idealization that, I mean, I guess we could probably figure out at some point.
Yeah.
But right now I don't know what it means, the car itself, but it probably means something.
Yeah. But he starts talking to the driver little by little, asking her about, things, and he finds out along the way that she's 23, which was the age his daughter would be if she had lived.
Mm-hmm.
That her mother, she learned to drive when she was in junior high because her mom made her drive.
Yeah, that was her only skill.
Yeah.
Now.
And her mom was abusive and all this other stuff.
She said that she hated her mother, but that's not the only thing that she felt.
Yeah, and that's I think true for a lot of people in kind of especially in parental relationships where that's your mom, that's your dad.
Yeah.
No matter how bad they treat you, you're always going to love them.
Yeah, and
it's
hard because there is a hierarchy.
Yeah.
Or there should be, right?
Yeah.
So it is hard, but I'm pretty sure that her mother is, or at least her depiction of her mother is like a not completely there person, that she's not sure if she had a disorder.
Yeah. Because then at the end when they kind of go on this long road trip to the driver's hometown to just get away and think, they both kind of feel like they were the responsible ones for their loved one's death. Like, right. She thought she could have done something to save her mom from a mudslide because she got out, but she didn't go back to help her mom. And our main character thinks he killed his wife because he didn't have anything to do, really. He didn't
go home straight away. He was scared of the conversation that she wanted to have.
Yeah, because he thought it was never going to be the same, and he loved her so much that he didn't want to lose her.
So he thinks that he drove her around for too long, and by the time he got home, she was dead. If he got there early, he could have done something, but realistically, neither of them did anything.
No.
And even if they changed what they did, still doesn't mean they could have saved the other person.
Yeah. But when she was talking about her mother, she was talking about how she had like a dual personality of a young girl that hadn't aged, and she would be sweet and she would be able to comfort her.
Yeah, when she introduced her, she was 8, and then 4 years after, she was still 8.
Yeah. So
it was like stuck in the childish mentality. That's our cat.
I don't know if it got picked up, but we just got a cat, so he might interrupt the episode a little bit. But yeah, I think that, in that particular scene, they kind of, I don't know, they have kind of a father-daughter relationship, but it's not quite that either. It is kind of a weird relationship, though. Like, they're not close.
Right.
But they do kind of feel like father or daughter. They do comfort each other, kind of, in a way. But, in the end, he does end up going back to acting because the former lover ends up inadvertently, he beats someone up and then that person dies, so...
Yeah, it's a lot of death towards the end of the second act.
Yeah, so it's...
Or the beginning of the third, I guess.
Yeah. So instead of, canceling the play altogether, he decides that, after this journey of them kind of coming to terms with, I think at least for him, he's coming to terms with the fact that his wife wasn't perfect. and wasn't perfect in a way that, I don't know, he had to come to terms with the fact that even though she wasn't perfect, she still could have loved him.
Yeah, he idealized everything in his head to make everything else that was happening okay. So he could keep on living, even though he knew all these things that happened, right? He knew all the flaws with his wife, but he pretended he didn't. And maybe that's what the car means. It's an idealized vision of something that's not perfect, but he makes himself believe it is.
Yeah, and then the ending where the driver is in Korea.
I don't know if it's important that she's in Korea.
Well, it doesn't matter, but she's in Korea, right. And she has the car, and she has like a dog. And I actually had to look this up because I was kind of curious what other people were thinking, like what this could mean. Some people think that she's still his driver and they're just on like a
road trip tour.
Like, kind of like a tour for the play. Some people think that he gave it to her because that was his like the last thing that he had of his daughter and his wife. Mm-hmm. And giving that away means that he moved on, and she doesn't have her scar anymore at the end. So she
also moved on.
She's not punishing herself for killing her mom. It could be that, or my favorite one that I found was, and what I kind of like, is that she wasn't real. She was kind of a coping mechanism for the main character.
And there's signs of that throughout the movie.
Yeah, because one of the ones that I thought that made the most sense when I read this one was the producers of the play say that everyone needs a driver for their production. Mm-hmm. But
no one else has one.
Yeah, no one else has one.
He has to give them rights. Yeah. Well, we see him give rights to one of the producers that's married to one of the actors.
Yeah.
The mute actors. But, that one could slide. But he also gives a ride to the guy that's up with his wife, that's playing the main character.
Yeah, and he doesn't have, like, he said he was driving, and he saw him and the girl that spoke Mandarin in English. Uh-huh. He saw them driving together without a driver. Right. So it's like, maybe they just said it because he had glaucoma. That could be a thing, but I think that it's more likely that it doesn't really exist.
Yeah, it's too difficult to I mean, we can't tell you for sure, right? Yeah. It's too difficult to do that, but even you like that possibility. I like it too, but even then we're still finding like situations that could not be.
Yeah, it pokes holes.
Yeah. Which I like.
I do too. It's such a interesting movie, and I think that I'm glad that it got nominated purely for the fact that it exposed me to it, where I feel like otherwise I probably wouldn't have even thought to look at it.
I'm not super familiar with the director's work. I watched Asako 1 and 2, and that's all I knew of him. I've never seen anything else with any of the actors. So, yeah. I mean, I would have watched this, but not immediately. I actually kind of put it in the back burner for a little bit. I was aware of it, but I don't know. The 3 hours can be very daunting. And I do think if this doesn't win Best Picture, the nomination itself is not going to help much. Because the common public is not going to sit through a 3-hour Japanese movie.
Yeah, I think that was part of the reason why we didn't watch it sooner, is because we just felt like we never had time to set aside 3 hours for one thing, especially when it's a language we don't speak. So
yeah, but that's bullshit though.
I know, but it's still like, come on. I mean, I'm so busy most of the time.
No, that's true, but like, it's not even the runtime. It's a scenario situation. Because I watched City Hall, which is a 4.5-hour documentary, and I did that all pretty much straight.
Is that in English?
It is in English, but I also watched other long stuff in other languages that just don't seem as daunting or as like mentally exhausting.
I'm just saying that this was a hard movie to just fit in, you know? Like, I feel like everything else you can kind of fit into your day. Or you could watch it while you're, you know, doing other things.
Yeah, that's why a lot of people are into stoner comedies and the type of Sandler movie, because you can just put it on and you don't even have to look at it.
This one's hard, but I think it's worth it. Like, I was really glad that we watched it, and I think it might be my favorite one out of the nominations.
Oh, it's definitely my favorite one. So, well, we haven't watched one of the 10, so I guess could change, but yeah, it's very quiet, and the 3 hours after watching it don't feel like a problem at all.
Yeah. But I think we both gave it an 8 out of 10.
Yeah, but I'm considering that 9.
Yeah, I mean, it really is close to a 9. It really is. Especially those ending third is really good.
The initial problem is if you don't connect it to it emotionally where it touches you, you kind of, just go through the motions, but by the end, even as in real time, some stuff weren't connecting with me, by the end, they all came together.
Yeah.
And we didn't cover everything because there's no possible way to do that. And some people, will make YouTube videos that claim they covered everything. They didn't. In years from now, we'll find out other stuff about it. And, there'll be more interviews about the director. And I doubt he'll top this. I mean, it's a 3-hour road trip movie, kind of, that got him a Best Picture nomination. And other nominations. I got 4 of them.
Yeah, it was a Best Picture, Best Director.
Yes.
Best Adapted Screenplay, and Best International Feature Film.
Yeah, those are all great.
All great, yeah.
And those 100%. Are big nominations, too. They're not just,
Yeah, whatever nomination.
Best Visual Effects. Which, I mean, next episode's Dune.
Yeah, so that has a lot of nominations,
but some of them are, it has a lot, but they're not. It doesn't have director, which is really huge, especially for him.
Yeah, but we talk about that in the next episode.
Yeah. So subscribe
and don't forget to check it out. I think we're gonna end this episode here, and we'll see you next time.